Hello and welcome to Digging with Dugan. Today we're going to be talking about early Rome in its Republican phase before she has overwhelmed her neighbors and dominated all of Italy. Of course, to spoil a little bit, but everybody knows that Rome takes Italy. So in the early days, and the aristocracy was still in its infancy, the means of nobility were based upon ethnic supremacy to an extent. Now, this is a strange sort of exclusionary. It's hard to say because what qualifies as properly Roman will be fluid throughout time. In these early days, it is very much tied to their ethnic group, but as you can harken back to the founding of Rome, the Romans are really a polyglot race. Romulus, according to their own story, it was just anybody in the area. They're not supremely ethnically originating from a single group, So, while they do have their haughtiness and their tardiness, the way they consider themselves to be superior, they don't, as much as many cultures in modern day that consider themselves supremely distinct, they don't as much have a strict cut figure. Now, that's not to say there's not a core, because there is, and it will eventually shape itself. But in its infancy, you could probably see many of the percentiles that will make up the original Roman form. As to say, Rome, when the Republic first marched, the people who had settled and established themselves properly in Rome proper, in the cities around it that had established their citizenship, they'd become an ethnic group through, mixing and staying in the same area together, and eventually all becoming one. So, while they were not originally all Roman, they become Roman through marriage, dominance, class, all these distinctions. So early Rome comes, and the aristocracy at the time bears much of the weight of military responsibility. They also hog most of the glory, of course, but they, it can be said, actually do a lot of work in there. As to say, they are all the officers who, let me say officer class, they have a very high casualty rate. They fill all the general positions in this time period, and all the soldiers, they brought their own equipment. So you really needed a lot of wealthy people in the military for it to be successful if you're going to have a well-equipped force, because it was bring your own gear. And in this time period, the men who succeeded were ruthless. Because you all had a very slim amount of time to be in office. Mind me, I'm going to be making coffee. To be in office. And you really wanted to use it. If you only had a year or 3 years to be in charge of your own personal army, you're just, you might have been a man from a wealthy estate who used to bossing around slaves and organizing a plantation perhaps, but running 1,000 men, several thousands of men on a border where you could just, march wherever you want and take plunder and slaves, and it will be considered lawful and good, and you can make as much as you can make, And so, in a lot of the reason why Rome will conquer Italy is because, not simply because they have the best army, because they have the best army that always is fighting the maximum amount of time. Because there's always a new commander who is hungry for loot, who is never, potentially, going to get this opportunity again. And he wants to make the most of it. So every single time a man of talent finds himself in a position of power, he is kicking ass and taking names for the glory of Rome. For his own personal glory is what it's for. But it turns out to be the glory of Rome because all these great men replacing each other and retiring to sit upon their golden thrones they've earned for themselves in the countryside somewhere, with all their slaves and their money. The next guy comes in and now he's running things and you're not. So you all pass the power seat. You make your families. Great families will rise and fall, and much like in the modern day, it's weird. Success will spend your bloodline. It's a strange thing, but it takes like 3 generations for a family to decide they don't want kids if they're so thoroughly wealthy and their family comes from truly humble roots. Yeah, it's backwards, but truly humble roots. Then, even in Rome, they get spoiled, and they did have contraception. They did have ways of doing the deed without producing children. Oddly enough, there's a plant back in the day that has gone extinct from overuse. But it's such a damn good birth control. Yeah. So, they live very modern lives, even though they had a very not so modern concept to war and ethnic supremacy. Once again, that supremacy was not color-based in any way towards us. One day, very far down the road, Nubians, men as black as men get, will be considered Romans and will be in the Roman Empire for quite a while. They'll be in the Byzantine Empire. I think they maintain the Nubians. There's at least Nubians in Egypt, and the Byzantines, the Eastern Romans. That's jumping real far ahead. But that's just a point to say that not now nor later is this necessarily color-based, or you should not be applying modern ideals to Romanness. And now, to talk more about the politics of the time. We have the Samnites and the Boyai, and of course there will be migrating tribes stumbling in later. In the south, in the there's the Samnites, I believe. In the north, there's the Etruscans. There's a little rambling. I wanted to get something out. Been a little bit. Maybe more of this less prepared bullshit will be producible. We'll see. Said this before, But we'll try. Hope it's a little entertaining. Just to touch on Manlius himself, I guess. Manlius Torquatus. He earned the name Torquatus, which means the Torqued One, when he was faced with an army of Gauls, and the largest of them holding a golden torque around his neck. It's a necklace that has these prongs at the back that pinch like this, so you can pull them out a little bit and take it off. He won a duel with his massive Gaul with the assistance of like a raven or a crow, which lands on the Gaul's shoulders and tries to peck his eyes out while Manlius wins. The Gauls take this as a sign from the gods and flee, and this is how Manlius gets his name. Manlius is associated with military supremacy and military strength to the utmost, like to the supreme degree that they will sacrifice their own family. In one case, Manlius, his son, in an attempt to mimic the glory of Manlius Torquatus, and to himself, earn himself a cognomen, which is to say a nickname like the Torqued One. He broke rank, disobeyed orders, in order to face, it was a Latin or a Samnite, and who he killed in battle. The man loved him and cheered him, and he stripped the loot, and when he presented it to his father, he had him publicly executed because he disobeyed orders. When Manlius had done his duel, he had gained the permission of his commander to fight the Gaul. But in this case, his son broke ranks, disobeyed orders, and he could not encourage his men to be indisciplined. And so He made an example of his own blood, which is something the Romans would later laud to be very admirable. Manlius' spirit will become the epitome of what it is to be a proud Roman who serves the state. Very much their version of ask not what the state can do for you, but what you can do for the state. He was a sublime being as far as anyone else was concerned. Thank you. This has been Digging with Dugan. Hope you enjoyed.